Part of me wish I had a script for this video because I have so many things to say that are going to cover different aspects of this thing that I kind of wish that I would take the time to organize my thoughts. However, that would take literally days worth of work. So we're just going to go with the, a la carte version, so to speak, whatever comes into my mind. The marathon trailer was revealed, and for me, I must say, it does not make me the live stream that it did. It didn't make me. It didn't warm me up to the property to the IP. It didn't do it for me. In fact, I think it made me even more reluctant. First of all, let's talk about the format. You guys know this, whether it was the Xbox Developers Direct or anything like that. I don't like it when developers talk to me about the game before showing it to me. Don't tell me, I don't care. I frankly do not care. Don't tell me about your game. Don't tell me about your game until I have bought into it. Tell me on the game first, preferably by me playing it, okay? And then once I'm sold on the game, once I'm a fan of the game, oh man, I'm going to take it. Like, dude, they could come up with another 5 hour documentary on God of War 2018, and I will sit through every single minute of it because I'm already a fan of it, because I've already played the game. Let the games do the talking. I watched the live stream, and honestly, I think there was only like, I don't know, maybe 20 to 30 minutes worth of actual gameplay and video in the live stream. The rest were just them talking, and I just skipped it because I'm just like, why are you wasting my time? I don't care about your game yet. I don't care about your property. I don't care what you try to do, how you try to do it, with whom. I know that you guys are all great. I know you're trying to make the best product that you can. But if that product cannot speak for itself, then I think that kind of tells you a lot. So I really hated the format. I think it was a huge disappointment. Maybe a 3 out of 10, just because it was some gameplay, but really that's a barely passable. Maybe 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10 seems better. So the live stream was completely garbage as far as I'm concerned. The game itself, it has so many components. Let's talk about the good one first. The gameplay looks crisp. The sound design of the guns, even though I haven't played it yet, it sounded good. The sound sounded good. But in the trailers with all of the audios and the voiceovers and even the one that they had with like the streamers playing, there's still like them talking over the thing. So it's hard to hear environmental cues and details, how the sound is going to actually respond. Can you hear footsteps behind you? Can you identify footsteps from your friends versus footsteps from the enemies? And can you identify what kind of enemy it is by the footfall? Is it like a heavier soldier? Is it a UESC mechanic or mech droid or something like that versus a ghost operative from the opposite team, so on and so forth. How there are some contextual cues that they have, for example, birds rising up from the ground. Those are supposed to give you some kind of alert that there's something going on in this area. But is that also intelligent? So for example, I also watched another video that was sent to me by oh God, I forget. I'm so sorry, but you know who you are on Twitter. Send me another video explaining some of the story and the law of the world. And basically, Tau 34 was a colony of I guess Earth or Mars, whatever the human population. But it's gone dormant for centuries. A little bit like what Intergalactic is trying to put off, right? So you're going back into this colony that has been lost for centuries, and you're trying to find out what happened there in many ways, and trying to apparently loot and pillage it. It is what it is. But my thing will be with that is that the fauna, which are the animals, should be used to like the mech droids and whatever. And over the centuries, they should recognize those and not being a threat. So, for example, if a mech droid is walking around birds, maybe they don't need to take off because they know that this isn't a threat. But then maybe these new runners that you're playing, they recognize those as a foreign object, so then they take off. Things like that. Would they have that much design thought behind it? And from what I've seen of the rest of the world, I don't think they will. I honestly think that this is, in some ways, the most involved, laziest project that I've seen in a long time. But we'll talk about it later. Yeah, so the gameplay looks okay. The entire premise of the whole extraction shooter and everything like that. Look, on that, I will not make any judgment call. I haven't played the game. It could be a lot of fun. It is what it is. My problem with it is that it comes from Bungie, and as soon as it's a Bungie live service game, I'm just thinking that Eververse store. I'm just thinking, here we are again, and they call the art style graphic realism. I call it genetic monetization. Like the monetization of potential of this is built into the DNA of the art style. I, man, I just see so much demand from the developers in terms of how much money they want you to put back into this game. It's yeah, I don't know. I'm just not feeling particularly great about it. I just feel like this is one of the most monetizable art styles they possibly could have come up with. And it just, oh man. When I try to, what I try to do, yeah, with art styles of games, especially art styles like this, whether it's Cyberpunk 2077, God of War Ragnarok, whether it is even Concord, whether it is Guardians of the Galaxy, when I try to, especially in the sci-fi world, because I really care about sci-fi, um, a sci-fi world is science fiction, right? But the science part is just as important as the fiction part. The science part is meant to be grounded in some kind of reality, some kind of rules, some kind of thought that, okay, you see this item, yeah, it was designed by someone in this world. It was designed for a purpose. It was designed to achieve a mission. It wasn't just a random collection of colors and motifs that were just put on in order to, I don't know, look graphic realist, right? That's the science part. The fiction part is let's have fun with it. Let's push it to the max. Let's push it to the extreme. Their art style, graphic realism, is basically if you had a somewhat, I would call it organic brutalist thing, which kind of sounds weird because organic is something that kind of okay, brutalist. Brutalist is easy. Brutalist architecture is basically architecture that is usually quite squared off, quite exposed. It doesn't try to blend into nature. It stands starkly against the natural backgrounds of the place. And it doesn't try to blend in. It doesn't try to assimilate. It doesn't even try to look like something comforting. Brutalism, in many ways, is meant to be domineering. It's meant to be imposing. Let me put up some example of some brutalist architecture in buildings, so that we can see, just how in many ways uncomfortable they can be. So you know what? This one is a pretty good example. Let's just take a look at it. Uh, that's the wrong thing. Here we go. Okay, so you can't, of course. Let me see. Over here, if you take a look at this design here, right? Let me turn off the screen for my little thing for a while. There you go. Right? You can see that this building, all concrete, all triangular shapes, straight lines, linear, glass, everything, all of this looks man-made. This does not look like it could have sprouted from anyone else's like any environment that wasn't heavily manufactured, and this imposes its dominance upon the culture, upon the psychology of the people that visit this building, those who see it, upon the land that it stands on, and that's usually what brutalist architecture does, right? It's imposing, it's many ways uncomfortable, it's straight lines, it's uncomforting, it is quite often cold, and it just basically stands out. Now, sometimes they try to marry it in these ways where they have this thing that look at these trees and these buildings have no relationship to one another. Remove this building and this, sorry, remove these trees and this building will still stand just as it does. There is nothing beautiful about it. There's nothing from the thing. Now, if we go to organic architecture, you're going to see that it looks quite different, right? So, for example, if we take a look at this house over here, which is quite a famous house, I just forget the name of it at the moment because Jesus Christ, I can't remember all of these things. But I think this is called it's called Waterfall or something. God, I forget. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. I actually This is a very famous house. And while it itself has a very modern architecture, it is clad in materials that reflect the environment that it is at. You take a look at the stones, you take a look, at the way that lights and shadows bounce together. Yes, it stands out, but it is more organic in a way. And of course, we can go a little bit further if we take a look at this. For example, and I really hope that these are not AI because I don't have the time to check. But over here, if you take a look at this, you see a lot more curves, you see a lot more softness, you see a more biophilic type of design. This is biophilic architecture, which basically means that you're trying to blend in the outdoors and the indoors, and you see that in the way that they're burning the rocks, they're burning the soil, so on and so forth. But one thing that you would definitely notice when you take a look at organic architecture is that we have a lot of curves around. Okay, so instead of having that whole brutalist linear and triangular shapes, rectangular, triangular shapes, we are going to see a lot more curvature. We're going to see something that tries to look softer, like this particular design over here. You can see that it literally has, the lawn on top of the roof to again try to make it softer, try to make it something that actually blends into your environment. That's something that the environment and it have a direct relationship to. So there it is. Now, compared to that, we're going to have marathon, and it kind of has elements of both, but I think it doesn't really justify either well. And the way that I'm going to show you this is, I have a few screenshots that they left for the game here. Uh, okay, it's wow. We're gonna have to go through the video for me to illustrate this point, but you know what? Just bear with me. There's at least one photo here that kind of does it first. Okay. So, you know what? We're going to work what we have. The first one that I'm going to talk about is this one. Don't worry about the player character for now, even though the player character also kind of shows that organism in that, very silhouette, very close to the body, revealing the curves and everything. They could have definitely designed, and one of the other characters is a lot more kind of brutalist in his shape, but they could have definitely designed something that was a lot more straight edge. For example, the robots that you are going to be fighting, they are a lot more industrial. But if you take a look at the background, you're going to see brutalism, right? That this is completely brutalist. In fact, they went really hard into it in order to achieve the whole graphic realism thing, where they have a lot of like signifiers that look made for machines. This looks like it was prefabricated by a machine in a 100%, machine control thing. And that machine needed all of these pluses and all these signifiers to align things properly, to have that visual recognition for the machine AI to just manufacture these things. But now here they stand in the environment and they stand out. They are not trying to blend in whatsoever. They are brutalist. They are extremely, kind of rectangular, except you see it even on this corner. Why is this round? Why would a machine design a rounded edge, a rounded curvature, you know? And you're going to see that kind of discrepancy kind of show up many times over and over again. Um, for example, this over here is the escape pod. I think this is meant to be. And it has a very brutalist shape by nature because, again, it doesn't try to blend in and everything. And yet it has these little pods that are, again, very curved. Why are they curved? It almost looked like they're supposed to be aerodynamic, but as a person that studied aerospace engineering, I can definitely tell you this is not an aerodynamic shape. So if you had the capacity to design something like this, you definitely had the capacity to design something even more brutalist. You could have just created a pyramid, which, something like an arrow tip, what it wouldn't be great for aerodynamics either. If you had propulsors on the edges like this thing does, you could make it fly, even in planetary environments, and it will probably be a lot less, a lot more drag efficient than this particular shape. But they have these curves that kind of come out of nowhere to me. So over here, when you take a look at most of the background, you're going to see that everything is straight, everything is edge. You see the nature over there, and you see the manufacturer side over here, and there is again no relationship between the two. If you remove these trees in the background, you wouldn't even know that they were gone. You wouldn't even think that there's anything wrong because you're in such an industrialized, brutalist architecture place. Um, and yet they try to use soft colors and everything like that, which again, why is everything white? Like, why did they manufacture everything and then go to the trouble of painting all of these colors? And that's what I mean by kind of organic brutalism, because it almost seems like there is a ghost in the shell. There's something that tries to make it almost aesthetically or visually pleasing. But unfortunately, I don't think that it is in world. I think it's just the designers of the actual game trying to make their avatar stand out. Because if all of this was just a dull gray or like a anodized steel kind of look, which would be like a silverish gray kind of a thing, it will all just be so dull and boring. And I mean, this isn't the most exciting environment, but you know, they add pops of color pretty much any and everywhere in order to make you seem like, yeah, they that it's an interesting world and everything like that. But for me, the thing that I don't like about it is that it's not a logical one. And that's the science and science fiction to me kind of being waylaid to the side in order to make the graphical art style pop out. And we'll talk a little bit more about it there. Let's talk a little bit about art styles. Art styles, I think, especially when it comes to sci-fi, communicate so much of the world's history. Now, again, I took a look at another video that kind of detailed the history of the world, and there's been many wars. And at this point in the story, I think there's been like centuries worth of wars and everything like that that have been going on. And there are people from the solar system, Sol, are coming to this solar system here, which I forget what it is, but this planet was called Tau 34. I think it's much bigger than Earth. And are coming to kind of like have a one last hurrah, to kind of be like, wait, we sent a civilization or the beginning of a civilization into the stars hundreds of years ago. We've been fucking up ever since. So now let's go see what those guys did because they've gone dark and see if we can basically rescue some of the things so that we can fix that situation. But basically, it's like all industrialized now. It's all companies fighting over power and everything like that. So it's not like that really trying to do it for the greater good, which is an interesting premise. It's not a novel one, but it's interesting enough. We could go and say it. But yeah, I find the art style to be incongruous. I find it doesn't make sense with the world, and that really bothers me. So you know what? Let's just talk about it. Okay, I'm going to do kind of a medium dive into the art style and some of my issues with it, and the reasons why I find it very kind of annoying. So from before we get started, I want to talk about this book. Okay, now this book over here. Sorry, the light is kind of hitting it wrong. You know what? Let's just kind of put it there. Yeah, it's called The Design of Everyday Things. Okay. I don't know if that was reversed on your side, but that's what it says. It's called The Design of Everyday Things. And what this person has done, or a group of people, whatever, Don Norman, what he's done is that he's analyzed how to communicate good design. Okay. Basically, you know how it's supposed that even like a 3-year old can understand how to use an iPhone, right? Like when the iPhone was first coming out, I think Apple made a big deal about that, that even like 2 and 3 year olds can almost entirely operate the phone for basically what they wanted to do. And the reason that was a brag is that, first of all, smartphones and phone systems before were notoriously complicated and unintuitive. But Apple managed to take one of the most complicated devices, one of the most complex devices that we've ever created as a human, as a human race, and make it so intuitive and make it so understandable that even like children with like that can barely like communicate language can almost entirely operate them, right? Now they can't really dive into the settings and understand the nuances between this or that, but they can operate the phone. If you ask your 3 or 4 year old to call their father or the mother or whomever it is that you want them to call, I mean, they have voice inputs. They could just say, hey, whatever, trigger the key phrase, and then communicate. And that is a thing that they built in. That isn't by accident. So the design of everyday things talks a lot about everyday things. It talks about things like jars and jugs and why they are designed this way and how to design a good one. It talks about doors and handles. It talks about sinks and plugs. It talks also about electronic systems and how you communicate, again, how to the user, to the end user, how do you communicate how to use this gun or how to use this lamp or how to use this switch to make sure that as soon as the person sees something, he walks into a room, he can understand the capabilities of that room. Those are called the affordances, basically what can be done. He can understand the signifiers, which is basically signifiers are where you can do those things, right? And then finally, they can also understand mapping, which is which thing relates to what, right? So I say all of this to say that I'm interested in design. And I say all of this to say that design is a science much more than it is an art. Like if you design something well, there's a scientific method for designing things well. Yes, you can do it intuitively. You can be like, oh, well, I want to make a room, right? I want to make a room, and I want a light in that room, and I want a switch to turn on or off that light. Well, I walk in the door, and I'm going to put the switch next to the door because that will be the most convenient place where I want to make that action happen. you know Turn on the light when I come in, turn it off when I go out. That makes sense. That can be intuitive, but it's also scientific. Like, you don't have to guess it. If you had a completely different design intent, or something that you haven't seen before, you can fall back to a book like this, or I'm sure there's hundreds of other books, and they will talk to you about similar terms that will indicate to you where is the most logical place. I say all of that to say is that in a science fiction world, especially a world like this one that is, I think, at least 1,000 years into the future, those kind of nuances should have been completely etched out. Because in a world designed mostly by machines, where somebody had to sit down and program these things should have been sweated upon and everything like that. So let's talk a little bit about this. So here is probably one of the more beautiful key outs that they have put out. And what I want to ask you here is, what is this arrow saying? Why is this arrow here? Why is it red? Any color that stands out, they have all of this black and dull blue or dull indigo kind of a thing. Let's just look at the gun and everything like that, right? Now, the scope being bright blue, I can kind of understand that you'll make this because let's say that you have this in a backpack or in a pocket and you want to just waffle through and quickly find it. That blue could indicate to you something quite significant because no other part of the gun is that same shade of blue, and it's kind of a neon blue. It could stand out in low light and everything. So that kind of makes sense to me, the scope. I can also understand the front, okay, no problem. But why this red bit? This red bit should be permanently attached to the gun. What do these arrows mean? Are they telling you that the gun should be pointed that way? But every other design, there's no other way to hold the gun and pull the trigger while kind of like pointing the gun the other way. So why is it there? Why is this X here? What is that communicating? Was that during the manufacturing process of the gun? Is that, for like, again, machine recognition of, the different gun parts? If so, why is it left exposed? Again, over here, I don't know exactly what this shape here is meant to do. My only idea is that if you were to store this gun or host it, I guess, on your thigh or on your backpack, like on your back, maybe there are just extra grab handles to be able to retrieve the gun from wherever you have hosted it. But otherwise, I don't really understand why this shape will be here. And the reason I say that is that when you go prone, right, upon the ground, this handle could disturb you, right? This handle could act as a fulcrum about which you can't really quite get the gun as stable as possible. And you're thinking, wow, Emmanuel, you are, really going into the details. But here's the problem. You created a world called graphic realism, heavily based in sci-fi, so it kind of has to make sense. Why would this handle here be this way, when it could interfere with a person going prone and shooting? Now, of course, you could say, well, in the game, you can't go prone, which in this case, it will never be a problem in the world. But again, if you just think about the world itself, people can go prone in the world. People can go against the ground. What if you wanted to put this on like a banister for like a staircase and prop it there so that you could have more stability? Again, this handle isn't particularly well suited for something like that where you have to prop it against a straight edge. So, anyways, that's the gun. Another thing about the character is that all of these characters are not humans themselves. They are shells that are basically cybernetic droids, which people can download the consciousness into. Makes sense? Okay, no problem. But why is this strip here neon green? Okay, now again, think to yourself, what is the in-universe reason to make this thing neon green, considering that the head is going to stand out more from the environment? And if you are sending in a team that is meant to retrieve something in a hostile place, why would you want to put something bright neon green for them to stand out, especially right on the head, which will be a highly visible part, right? Because every time you pick around the corner, every time you just want to take a look at it, boom, you have this big neon green thing indicating here you are, it will kind of make stealth kind of, a little bit harder than it needs to be. Again, over here, when you have the med pack over here, this looks like a med pack, right? This looks like something. Now the only thing again that I could think of is that this med pack is neon green because it will allow you to identify quicker if you had a bag or you stored it again somewhere. It will stand out in low light situations, no problem. And then maybe this little spolder elbow shoulder pad situation, not elbow shoulder pad situation here, maybe that's neon green to indicate that the neon green thing goes into the neon green receptacle. Okay, so in this case, what you will say is that neon green things in this world are there to highlight something, something that is important, some kind of detail, right? Let's take that philosophy and then let's make it kind of an understanding thing. If you see neon green, that's because the designer wanted you to know there's something to pay attention to. It's kind of the universal language of like, hey, pay attention to this. In our world, it's typically red, right? Like if something is bright red, for example, a stop sign is red, a red light is red. If you see a lot of like signs that are meant to communicate to you, attention, they'll flash red. Red is our, hey, pay attention. There's something going down kind of indicator. Like usually whether it's in movies or whether it's an actual, military bases, the kind of button that does something, usually that's red. Again, it's like, hey, pay attention to this thing because it has something significant, which is again why I don't understand why this part here is red. But in their world, it could be neon green instead. No problem. I don't mind it. Here, there's a carabiner. I don't know why they have one, but I don't know why that would be neon green. Other than again, let's just stand out from the for the graphic realism. Let's just stand out because we want our game to look cool. Now over here, they do have some very brutalist things. Here is the arrow, and this arrow is supposed to, I guess, communicate to this droid. This could be a self-driving automotive unit over here, at least partially so. So it could be like, hey, go park over there, go charge over there, and this could be the recognition for its cameras and everything. So again, those things are cool. I like the idea that, hey, this is originally designed for a world that could be like 80% supported by machines. So all of these indicators are here so that the machines can recognize where they are. So for example, 065 over here or 590, depending on how you see it, could be for this machine to know that it is parking into the right trailer, coming into the right bay to charge or to deliver its cargo. So I like those details because I think that makes sense to me. If you create a world that is mostly actually meant for the machines to understand. So, but there are just too many discrepancies between that, inconsistencies. So again, here we see this environment, and again here you see that brutalist nature of it, right? But then you see these rounded edges again. Are these edges rounded because they wanted it to be less drag resistant? No, because again, we have straight edges in other places. Are these rounded for any reason whatsoever? No. I think they just had a cool art style and they wanted to go for that. So again, over here you see this chamfered edge. Why is it chamfered? Like, why did the machine take? It's harder to create something that has a chamfer edge than something that does not. So why would the machine take the time? Actually, over here it looks like it's not even chamfered. It just looks like it's a graphic. So if it is just a graphic, why is this graphic there? Like, what would be the mechanism? Now over here it looks like they are growing plants, probably for the human inhabitants at some point. This looks like it was a little bit of a farm that they had going on. But again, over here they have all of these red things, and I'm just like, what does red signify to you then? Red, this planter box, right? It is not something that should demand attention. This should just be black. Why is it red? What purpose would a designer have to say like, hey, yeah, you know what? Humans keep paying attention each and every day. Pay attention to the base of this planter box. What would that do? Over here, you see the fixtures, and they are in red. And I can kind of understand these. Like again, if you have like Android servitors that are going to go and be the ones who mostly service these things, maybe you want them to know where all of the joints and the braces are so that they can use machine recognition to kind of understand if something is out of shape or out of line. Um, but then we see this neon green panel in the back. And this is when I started to see that the neon green was just to make things look cool. And it had Well, why is that wall neon green? What would that do? What is it calling attention to be like, yeah, this is where you want to go? Now, if you take a look at this little device at the background there, that is neon green. And that looks like the control panel for whatever this installation is. So that makes sense to me that that would be neon green because I would just think to myself, like, hey, I'm in this world. Every time there's a console or a thing that is neon green, that is, hey, pay attention. That's a signifier for basically what it is that you can do, right? Like, what is this? Again, over here, these neon green handles, I can kind of understand them because they could say to you, like, hey, these are the handles, come and open it from here, or come and lift this thing out from here, whatever it is. So, neon green kind of makes sense over here that, hey, there's something that you can do. But again, why is this wall? What am I going to do with this wall being neon green? Am I supposed to push it? Am I supposed to, I don't know, what would that be there for? Right? It calls attention to itself for nothing, right? So I don't like that. Over here, even the ramp here has this neon green and red thing. And again, the arrows, like a human would intuitively understand that this is a ramp, I can go up and down it. So if you've got these arrows there, I'm thinking, oh, this is for the machines to understand what they're supposed to do. But again, why would that be red and neon green when it will clash with the thing that you need to communicate to humans? You could easily have made just you have you, let me try again. You could have easily made this ramp black and white, and it will provide the image recognition for any machine, but it wouldn't call attention to itself for an actual human operative. And remember that they were sending humans to this place. So it was created with humans in mind, even if they thought that most of it would be serviced by robots or whatever. Now over here we go over here. So these are pods. This looks to me like this will be the escape pods that your people will go into, and then this will be the flight deck and everything. So okay, cool, no problem. Here's a ramp. I actually really like the design of this ramp. We might see it in the video later. But over here again, I'm thinking about this wall. Why is this wall white? Like, why did they paint it? Why did they go through the process of that? And the only thing I can think of is, yeah, they just decided that, we wanted our game to look this way. Okay. Another thing I don't like, this over here, this looks like just stacks of cables and things, but they are neon green. Again, what would a human do about that? What would a human do with that? Neon green is supposed to be the thing that gets you to pay attention in this world, just like red will be. Like, think about it to yourself. Would you make this red if you were building and designing a industrial complex now, and these cables were there permanently and people couldn't easily do anything about them? Would you make them bright red? Would you say like, hey, pay attention to this? No, you probably make them black or white or whatever else was going on, but you wouldn't make it like a, hey, this is a signifier, pay attention. Over here again, this is like neon green and everything like that. And I have to ask myself, why is this neon green? The only thing I could think about why this could be neon green is that if you are exploring the planet, right, and these are your planetary suits, then it will help you to recognize each other in low light situations and in the dark. So that again could make a lot of sense. Okay, over here you have this thing for bio waste, but again, I asked myself, why is this bin here? Because this here looks like a thoroughfare, like this looks like a boot where the people maybe they came in with snacks and then they decided to put the bin over there. But why would that need to be neon green? You could have made that a lesser color. And what I mean by lesser color is that you could have made that a purple, you could have made that a blue, just to be like, hey, you can pay attention to this, but it's not like mission critical, you know? Again, we use red kind of judiciously in our life, right? Like over here, they use red over here. And what is it saying? This is just a number of like whatever this bench seat situation is supposed to be or this storage situation. Why is that red? Why is it like, hey, pay attention to 008.A? Again, the machine that manufactured this doesn't care what color it is. Color and everything, the use of that science, that language, all of that is about the humans, right? So you can't just be like, oh, it's so that the machines recognize it. The machine could have recognized any shade. The machine could have recognized any, you could have had any QR code kind of a thing to help the machine know the alignment and everything like that. If you put a color somewhere, that's because you want the humans to understand something about it because the design is supposed to communicate something. So for example, over here, down here, you see here, they have numbers on the floor and these numbers are just black. They're just black on black or black on gray, and the machine can recognize this because you've put a signifier there for the machine to look for. You put this little plus there, and that is again for image recognition so that the machine knows, kind of where to orient itself in proportion to the object. Even these stripes over here, which are again just black and white, that those are for machines. But over here, you're using red, and I'm like, why? Why is this in neon green? Okay, so in a lot of these environments, why is this bright orange? What was the purpose of this panel to be made in a completely different color from like the typical white? Why is this bright orange? What would that do? What would a human constantly look at this and be like, yeah, I want to see that. Why is this stencil there? Why is there neon green highlights over here? Aside from like, oh, we want our game to look cool, what is the in-universe reason for these things, right? By the way, this must be an earlier screenshot because they didn't have the same neon green as they did in the first image, but it's whatever. Um, yeah, I find the industrial design of this place to make so very little sense, right? Even these guns. Okay, now listen, I am not a ballistic manufacturer nor expert, but I will question why this gun kind of like nozzle has this shape. Because to me, that would just seem to create a lot of vortexes and everything like that. That would disrupt the path of the bullet. To me, that's my first thing that I think about here. There's a reason that we don't have a lot of rectangular guns in the real world, right? They look cool for sci-fi, but we don't do it because they will have actual issues for the ballistics and the travel and the predictability. It will have a lot of trouble for the actual bullet's path and your ability to target and hit what you want to hit. And these things, these edges over here, would just create additional vortices, sorry. And even if they didn't impact the path of the first kind of shot, they would definitely kind of have some lingering effect for the second one. Whatever, right? Just like a man, you're going too nerdy, but these are things I care about in sci-fi. Like I really, really do. Okay, over here, this is one of the biggest offenders. Okay, this I hated. I hated every. I was watching this in the actual direct, I guess, the live stream, and I hated every single part of this frame. Okay, so first of all, again, why is this door neon green? You could be like, oh, Emmanuel, it's to signify that's where the door is. Okay, could we not have used another color? Is it not obvious itself by the shape and by the frame? Would the human not know that this is a door, right? Why couldn't it be white? Wouldn't it have been stood out just as much in white without having to use the universes? Like this is the in universes kind of like, hey, pay attention to me. I'm important. I'm critical. There is something for you to do about this thing. A hanger door is what we're going to clad the entire thing in neon. And by the way, this is like not even the worst example. Then they have all of these attached. Why is this here? Why is this there? The only thing I could think to say is that this is telling the machine to attach the next component that will contain the glass, but why would it be less exposed? And why wouldn't it just use any kind of other symbols? For example, instead of using the word attach, which again can only speak to humans because machines don't need to use the same language as us, they could have used stripes and QR code or even these little dots over here. Maybe they could have varied the amount of dots, and different dots to the machine would read different things and contain different instructions. If you guys again want to look into cryptography and anything like that, you're going to see that we really don't need to be using words. In fact, for machines, words can sometimes be extra confusing because letters are not designed to have like the fastest scanning rate in mind, possibly. But over here, you see these little dots there? Those are for machines, those are for humans. So again, why would it keep saying attach? Why would this keep saying seal? What is it even sealing? you know? Why is this thing upside down? Why the letters and the numbers upside down? Again, none of this makes sense. Over here, why does it keep saying seal? Over here, why does it keep saying, why does it say patch? But I'm just like, I'm so frustrated by this screenshot because I'm like, all you did, you just plastered stencils and motifs and signifiers and everything just all over the place to give a quote unquote unique look. Over here, I've been looking at the storage boxes and I cannot understand what STN is supposed to be. Is this supposed to be like storage solution? Like, what does STN mean when I can clearly say that this is just a basket? This is just an industrial basket. I don't understand why he says STN and he always says STN. And I'm like, what does STN stand for? Like, there's just so much visual clutter that I'm just like, yo, even if I don't mind this thing. I don't mind this. You see the floor, you see these stripes and everything. I don't mind that. I don't mind you saying that, hey, Emmanuel, this was because the machine did it. This is a brutalist architecture, it's a brutalist world. They didn't want to go, they are sending people across the spaces and the planets and hundreds of years of travel. They do not care about aesthetic beauty. They do not care about painting or plastering or putting tile down on the floor, or adding a nice wood floor with like a chevron pattern or anything like that. I understand that part. Okay, I understand the industrial nature and the industrial need. But then what does this do? What does seal do? What does attach do? What does a neon green door do? All of this is for the humans, and all of it is just confusing. If you walked into this room, you will be confused as to what you are able to do, how you're supposed to do it, and where you're supposed to access everything. You know? Whereas this little hatch here, I think should have been the only part that is neon green. And the reason I think that is that this could be a manual override. Let's say that the pod that you're in, or even the entire complex that you're in, right? Let's say that all of that is powered off. For some reason, it loses power. So this door that normally can be operated electronically now needs to be lifted. This could be the manual override. This if this entire part here was white, yeah, and then this little part here was neon green, this will tell you like, hey, if you ever need to manually override this door, manually release the lock or whatever, or manually lock it up, this is where you access the little panel and you'll find those things behind that thing, right? Again, it's just, man, I'm just so frustrated, right? Okay, now we've kind of exhausted the screenshots. Let's go and take a look see at the what is it? We're going to take a look see at the actual trailer, right? That's what I want you to take a look at. Okay, before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about this book, The Design of Everyday Things, because I think that I'm sounding like a crazy person, and I should probably explain a little bit about why it's significant and a little bit about how it affects you in your everyday life, right? So, first of all, let's do a quick recap about the terms that matter when you're going. At least the terms that matter to me right now, because there's many things that matter, and I'm just trying to find the place that has everything like that. Okay, so if I just slide it, okay, good. Here we are. So affordances, it says on page 19, affordances are the possible interactions between people and their environment. Some affordances are perceivable, others are not. So what it means that is that an affordance is what you are afforded the ability to do. That's very simple, right? So for example, if you see a button, usually you know that you can press it, especially if it's for a electronic thing, right? A button is a signifier that, hey, there is an action, there's a thing that you're afforded to do when you push this button, right? But basically the affordance is what you're able to do. So for example, if we take a look, we said that some affordances are perceivable, others are not, right? How to come up with a good example on the fly? Okay, a a wheelbarrow, right? If we take a wheelbarrow, a wheelbarrow has two handles, right? It has a wheel, and then it has a barrel in it, right? The object itself with the storage compartment tells you that you are able to put things in there, right? Because it has the walls and everything to keep everything in place. That's an affordance that you have. The handle communicates the affordance of being able to lift it. And then the wheel communicates the affordance of being able to roll it. That's a wheelbarrow, very simple. Um, the signifiers, on the other hand, okay, signifiers signal things, in particular, what actions are possible and how they should be done. Signifiers must be perceivable, otherwise, they fail to function. And over here, they have an example, right, of a signifier that is poor. In fact, they have many poor examples. And they talk about this particular situation. Okay, so in this situation there's this sink, okay, and in this sink we have these in Australia, and they have a push pull mechanism, right? So essentially the stopper can be pushed in order to either seal the sink itself so that water doesn't go out, or push it again in order to lift it up so that the water can go out from it. And he's talking about how once he went into a hotel and he used the sink and he couldn't find a way to actually remove the water. So he started looking all around the sink, all around the room. Is there a switch? Is there a thing? Is there a lever? What do I pull? What do I pull? He wasn't familiar with the sinks. So then he goes down to the hotel lobby and he's like, hey, I can't get rid of the water. How do I make that happen? And then like, oh, just push it, push the stopper. And he goes up and he pushes it. And then obviously it works. But he was so frustrated by it. He was so pissed off because he's like, how was I supposed to know that I was supposed to push down this on this thing? Now, remember this. When he goes into the hotel room, yeah, the stopper is already pushed down. It's already flush with the sink because I don't know if you guys can see it, but essentially when you something like that, when you have it there on picture B, it's fully flush with the thing. You wouldn't think to push it down. And when he uses it to do his shaving or whatever, now the stopper is obscured by the water, the dirty water. Now he can't even see it. So now the thing is even less perceivable than before. So yeah, it's not intuitive. Also, it is kind of gross that you will have to put your hand back into dirty water just to be able to expel the water that you have. You know, like what if I don't know, for some reason you had like a nosebleed or just anything where, let's say you even, had a bit of a night out and then you go and you vomit in that sink. Now you have to go and put your hand back into your vomit in order to get rid of it. It's kind of disgusting. It's kind of a horrible signifier. And that's just one example of how signifiers can be really poorly implemented. And a lot of the things I'm going to talk about with regards to the art style is going to be about how they have horrible, horrible signifiers. Because sometimes a signifier could also tell you something that you think you can do, but you actually can't. And one of the biggest things with this is that when you have like a push pull door, right? And quite often, a push pull door is going to have like a straight horizontal bar across both sides. And then there'll be a sign that tells you push or a sign that tells you pull. Okay. Now, here's the problem with that. If you just have a straight horizontal bar, right, that is not easily grabbable, the natural action for that is you push it, right? Okay. It doesn't really seem like something that you pull. And that's why people put then a sign that says push or pull. But the thing about signs, especially that are worded, is that they only work if a person, one, pays attention to them, and then two, even speaks the language that they are written in, and then three, is going to know also instinctively that, oh, if I try one way it doesn't work, then I should try the other way. Sometimes people get stuck behind doors not because it's their own fault, but because the door doesn't signify to the person how it's supposed to be operated. And yes, there's like a whole chapter in this book about doors, how they should be designed. If you have a push-pull mechanism, you should only put like a straight bar on one side and then a grabbable handle to pull it. Because if I give you a handle that can actually grab, the natural thing is for you to pull it towards yourself. So all of those things don't need words, right? And one of the biggest things that you learn when it comes to like the actual design of everyday objects is that if you need to give a worded instruction as to how it's supposed to be handled on an everyday basis, then you've kind of failed as a designer, right? Think about your light switch. Your light switch doesn't say, hey, flip up or flip down. There's no word that is necessary because from the design of it, the only thing you can do is flip it up and down. It's very intuitive for you to understand, right? Babies, even dogs know how to use like light switches and everything like that, provided again that the paws can actually activate the switch. That is a different thing altogether. But again, like it's intuitive, animals can understand it. Like again, this one here is a really nice jug. I like this jug. It's not a particularly special jug, but it has a handle, and the only thing you can pretty much do with this handle is grab it. That is the most natural motion, right? Like you could put it down on the table, you could try to push it along the handle, but then you just look silly. You look like you're just trying to be obtuse for nothing, right? So those are signifiers. Now the other thing is mapping. Mapping, like I said, is about where things are in relation to the thing they affect, right? Where is it mapped to? It wouldn't make sense for you to put the light switch instead of the door, right? There's a door over there. Behind me is a light switch. You can see kind of by the picture there. It wouldn't make sense to put it on the opposite wall because then a person will have to walk through a dark room in order to get to the light switch. That makes zero sense. Another good example of mapping is in this particular book. They use the example of the electronic switch for your car seat. If you happen to have a car seat with electronic adjustability, most of the times those are quite well mapped. So over here, let me take a look. If we take a look at Mercedes, and then we're going to be seat control panel, whatever. All right, they usually have one that is actually quite nice. We're going to take this photo over here, right? So if we take a look at this one here, you can see here that this is a great example of mapping. And what we mean by that is, first is put in a logical place, right? This is a place where you can have easy access to it. The second one is that the good thing about this is that it looks like the seat. It looks like whatever you want to do to the seat, you can do to this object. If you want the seat to move forward, like the entire base, take the base part and push it forward. If you want it to move back, take the base part and move it back. If you want the headrest to go up and down or left or right, you go ahead and move it in that direction. It's a great example of mapping because the object itself tells you what part it affects, and whatever motion you do it will show you what is acceptable. For example, let's say that you cannot electronically adjust the headset up and down. Well, just make it so that this switch doesn't move up or down. Then you will instantly communicate to the end user that, hey, you cannot make this thing happen. Okay, here's another example of it, even though it's a little bit smaller. But you can see there that this here is a pretty damn good way of doing a light switch. Okay, so here we are. Okay, now right next to this is also the fan, and here you see again symbols. Now tell me, do you see words here? Do you see anything like attach or seal or push and pull? Do you even see arrows pointing? No, because it is well designed. It's designed for an organic life form, which is in our case humans. Any human that has any familiarity with seating in general can easily understand what this thing is trying to communicate to them. Even if, yes, they may not realize, for example, that you might twist a particular thing to make it move in a different way. That could be a little bit of an advanced thing, but for at least the basic usage, this is a terrific example of mapping. Another one that is related to a mapping is simply a car steering wheel. If you want to make a car turn right, you make the wheel and you turn it clockwise. If you want to make it turn left, you take the wheel and you turn it anti-clockwise. And that is again is a fundamentally great example of mapping, right? That is what we have um, in the real world, and that is what sci-fi should be based on. So you have three things that really matter when it comes to the environment communicating to its occupants how to use it. You have affordances, which is what is it capable of doing. Some of these things are obvious, some of these things are less obvious, right? Perceived and unperceived affordances. You have signifiers, which tell you where to make the action happen and how to make it happen. And then you have mapping, which is again, what is the relationship between the physical distance from the thing to, for example, the thing that it actually affects. For example, again, if you have a big hanger hole, right? And then you have like 18 switches, okay? You could make it so that even by the door, the switch that is closest to the door affects the first set of lights. And then as you move further and further away, all of the lights are being activated further and further away from where you're currently standing. Now, imagine that this hanger had two ends, right? On this side, this will work exactly this way. The set of switches that are closest to the door will affect the set of lights that are closest to the door. But then for the other side, it will be reversed, right? So that the set of light switches that were activated by the furthest panel on this side will be on the closest panel on the other side. That is again an example of mapping. All of these things matter, guys. Let's talk about the game. Jesus Christ. I get sidetracked. I love this shit. I hate this world. I hate this world, first of all, because it doesn't look alien enough. I know that the idea of Tau 34 was to find a planet that is supposed to be an Earth like planet, but why do we have ferns? One thing that I always kind of hate in sci-fi is that they never really try to push the boundaries of what a biosphere might look like. These trees look like they come from Earth, right? Why don't they look alien? Why don't they look different? Why don't they behave differently than the trees? Why don't these when these people are walking through, why don't the leaves shut? Why isn't there something that tells me that hey, this isn't just some kind of like Northwestern American fern or something? Like this looks like it's on planet Earth. If you didn't know that it's a completely different planet, it just looks like planet Earth. Why isn't the biophilia? Why isn't the biosphere different from the rules that we have here? Why aren't these leaves purple? Why are they green? Why aren't they like why is the skybox just like an overcast day in London? Why doesn't this world look alien? Right? Then over here, here's again the worst example. Okay, look at this neon green on the handrail. I can kind of understand that, right? It's a handrail. It's a handrail. Sure, okay, neon green. I think you could just use red or white or whatever. But why is this container entirely neon green, bro? Why is this neon green? Oh my god, man. I hate this world, right? I really do. I really think that the art style is let down by the fact that they wanted something that looks visually striking without taking the time to make sure that it actually made sense in universe. One thing that I will say though is that I do like the fact that this particular gun over here looks a little bit worn looks a little bit worn down. I do appreciate that. I also like the fact that this here isn't red and it doesn't have stupid arrows pointing for nothing. For example, over here they have these buttons. I really hope that these buttons are functional. I really hope that maybe when you activate a different mode, you can actually see your character model move their hand and come to activate one of these buttons here. I really hope that they've put in that much thought into this and to make sure that the actual design of the weapon is actually something that we get to use. Over here, they say insert, and I'm like, boy, again, if you have instruction like this, these are for people. So what is the person supposed to insert in there? I hope that we get to see that, right? Over here, this see these graphics here? These are for the machines, right? You can create so many instruction sets in there. This could be the code to create this entire gun, right? In this little piece over here, because machines can codify information in a way that we just simply can't. So whenever you see words written in English, whether you see digits, like these ones, understand that all of that is for humans to actually understand how this thing is supposed to operate. And whenever they don't make sense to you, why they will be there, I think that is a design problem. I think that is an issue. If I was the design lead on this thing, I would say like, hey guys, let's create a world that makes a lot of sense. So over here, I see a whole bunch of things that kind of displease me, right? Again, I would like to know the story better in order to make judgment calls as to whether these things make sense or not. I do understand the fact that you have these big containers that are labeled clearly for people to be able to see from far away. Remember that these, even though machines can use numbers, of course, to label and identify things, understand that again, if you wanted like ruthless efficiency for machines, you wouldn't use numbers and letters. And the reason that you wouldn't use numbers and letters is that you cannot understand them from like different shapes and orientations. So again, if you guys want to, one of the best things that we've ever created for machines is a QR code. And the reason that we created a QR code is that it has so many redundancies in it. A QR code can be understood by a machine in whatever orientation you point it at. And in fact, in many QR codes now, there's so much redundancy in there that you could lose about 3/4 of the QR code and the link will still work. And that is why sometimes you point your QR code at something that has been obscured by something else and your camera can still recognize the information. There's a lot of redundancy in there. There is a lot of information in there. And yeah, it works upside down, it works sideways, it works left and right, it works no matter the orientation of your phone or the original code itself. It's fantastic, right? So again, if you had these number containers and this was like for the shipping machines or for anything like that, the machine automated system to use, you wouldn't put numbers there because numbers have a different meaning if they're upside down or sideways. They don't make any sense anymore. You plaster this with either QR codes or some other codified system. So again, if you see numbers and letters in the world, that is not for the machines, that is for the humans. So again, what purpose did all of these numbers do? Now obviously it's nice to be able to say to someone like, hey, I'm in container 425, come and find me. That makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm not saying that it shouldn't be there. I'm just saying that these rules need to be consistent across the world in order for it to be something that you care about, right? Now again, over here, why is that part neon green? Why is this part here neon green? This part here, I can understand that this part will be neon green because this will be the joint. So again, this could be something that the machine that builds these particular shells could actually use. But again, I'm just like, guys, you need to make it make sense. You need to make it consistent because again, these other guys, they do not have neon green at their joints, for whatever reason, right? So we go through oh, another thing. I hated this particular screen frame as well. The reason I hate this frame is that first of all, unless there was an other alien race, it would be extremely hard to have organic circular shapes like this just hanging out there. So for me, if this shape is there in the background, then what is that hinting at? Was that going to be something else that is built? But we typically do not see anything else that is built in this architecture that will have such a large circular apparatus or circular skeleton. If you wanted to create something for the maximum structural integrity, you will use a triangular shape. Now, if you wanted like a big like inner volume, then obviously you could use a circular shape instead. But again, this will kind of be like a a structure that we do not really see in the rest of the world. Coming to the bridge, over here we see that brutalist nature of the art style. Over here, I love this bridge. I think this bridge over here is makes perfect sense in the world. It has the little mappings for, the machines to build it. It has little, graphic designs and everything over here. Again, all of these pluses could be for the machine recognition system. The stripes could mean something. It could make sense that the machine knows that, hey, put these stripes at the top of the railing rather than the bottom. That makes a lot of sense to me, right? I love the bridge because I think the bridge over here makes a lot of sense in the world. What I don't love is the cables. I don't love these cables. First of all, if again you're going for ruthless efficiency, why do they have so much slack? Right? Why would they slack so much? Why wouldn't you make this like a taut cable? Now, again, you could say, oh, Emmanuel, there's things like inclement weather events that will make it so that a rigid structure is just not best suited to carry whatever this thing is carrying, whether those are electronics or fluids or whatever. But again, for me, at first glance, I would think that if you wanted to make ruthless efficiency, instead of wasting all of this material creating these curves and these organic shapes, you would just make it as straight line as possible, mimicking the kind of design of the bridge. So for me, the discrepancy between these sort of like organic shapes and kind of inefficiency with the materials and everything like that makes it so it makes it so hard to respect this as a work of science fiction. It looks to me as a work of aesthetic vision. And I honestly don't think it's worth it. I don't think it is worth sacrificing the sci-fi, logical and rudimentary and brutalist nature and efficiency kind of mindset nature of everything that your world is supposed to do for what is at the end of the day not that aesthetically pleasing, appeasing. Sorry. So I don't know. So again, over here, understand that also color is for humans, right? A machine doesn't need something to be colorful to identify what it is. All you will need to have for the machine is just a QR code or some kind of like equivalent of that. And that is going to create, for the machine enough to understand that these are pipes, maybe these are like plumbing and everything. So for me, if you've made this pink and everything like that, that is for the humans to worry about. That's for a human mech, a human engineer, a human technician to be able to quickly identify in the room, like, hey, if there's a plumbing problem, I'm going to go to the pink pipes because that's where I can resolve that problem. Same thing with this neon green part. Again, why is that neon green? Okay, this frame doesn't make sense. Over here, do you see these things, the stripes here? Again, I can understand this as machine recognition, so that they know. Again, these symbols over here, I can understand that as machine recognition so that they know what to do about it. I can even understand these cables being a dull gray. Makes perfect sense. You wouldn't waste money trying to make these a pretty color for no reason. But then other things are pink. This world is so inconsistent that it's so frustrating, because it could have been so cool, right? I haven't talked about the design of the characters too much yet, but they basically have the same inconsistencies as the rest of the world. It's just that the world is so much worse. Because the reason I don't want to talk too much about the characters design and how they don't make sense is that I see all of this as monetizable. By season 3, these characters will look wildly different. There will be so many things and collaborations and contributions and different designs and different skins that you can get, that there's no point talking about their design and how their colors signify one thing or another, because all of these are just going to be skins anyway. They're just going to sell them anyway. So that's why I don't bother talking too much about the character design. But over here, if you take a look at this room, yeah, again, this is neon green, apparently to signify that this is the doorway. One thing that I hated, okay, we're gonna talk about this, is this sign. Tell me, what does this sign communicate to you? To me, that communicates that this is the bathroom. This is like a shower room, right? Over here, we see that there's also a water droplet. I don't know exactly what this is supposed to be here. Maybe that just indicates to the machine that, hey, there's going to be wet surfaces inside. But remember this sign. This sign to me communicates basically it looks like a shower head. It looks like water coming out, right? Either that or it looks like a tripod and it has like some kind of like camera there. Maybe it's a photo booth. Okay. But again, all of these extra things, remember the seal, all of these letters and everything, all of that is for the humans and all of that is unnecessary. Why is the STN? Bro, I hate this STN sign. I'm just like, yo, what is this supposed to do? Right? And again, all of these letters around here, I don't understand it, because again, you are hundreds of you're at least 1,000 years into the future from now. No machine is going to need letters anymore, because again, letters are not a good way to communicate for machines. So if you put these things here, why? What would the technician need to do about this information? I don't know, because the technician should have a scanner to be able to say like, hey, I can scan too, like whatever. Blah blah blah. Okay, some glass, some tech droids. Okay, over here. Now over here, if you take a look at the tech droids, this, if you were being consistent, this will be what your player characters look like, right? Again, this has a kind of ruthless efficiency, straight lines, nothing pretty about them. Different colors will signify different things, which is funny because they are going to be respectful of that, right? I 100,000% bet you that these colors over here are going to be consistent. If you take a look at a droid and you take a look at this color and its rough outline, you as the player of the game are going to know what kind of a droid that is, what its capabilities are, and basically what you can do about that enemy. They're going to keep this part consistent, but no other part of the world, the part that you do not as a player have to care about, for example, the floor, why is this floor neon green? Somebody tell me that, please. Why is that neon green? You know, there's no consistency. Remember the handrail before on the tower? It was neon green for the actual rail part. Now it's black. Like we don't give a shit anymore. Also, in the universe, right? There are these people called born on board. So these are the people who are, I think it took like 700 years to travel to this planet or something ridiculous like that, like a few hundred years anyway. And there were some generations of people, I think like 24,000 or something. Again, I'm getting these numbers wrong. But there's some generations of people that were born upon the ship and died upon the ship, right? So what I'm trying to say is that this world was originally intended to be an actual thriving colony, which meant that there were supposed to be children around here. Tell me, would a child make sense of this world? All of this visual clutter, would this make sense to a child? I don't think so, not intuitively. Why is it that the handrails have nothing to stop a child from just walking and deleting themselves, by just falling from the balcony? Like, again, be consistent with the rules of your world. Be thoughtful about what your world was originally designed for. Originally, it was not designed to be an arena shooter. It was not designed to be a place where people have firefights. It was designed to sustain life. It was designed to sustain human life. It was designed to make sense to explorers and to the medics and technicians and engineers and patrol officers and security forces that were supposed to be human and supposed to keep this place a thriving colony. So again, it doesn't make sense that the railing would have no lower portion that would prevent a baby from walking off of it. Okay, again, you take a look at all of these things, and again, it's like, why is this part here? Why is this big building pink over here? I do like the skybox over here. It looks more alien. I do like the fact that we see different planetary bodies in different distances and everything like that. Again, make this world look different from ours. Even this water. I wish the water looked much different. I wish the ferns and the things going out of the water were very different from what we typically have on Earth. But all of the design work was put in here, but all of the work that is put in is inconsistent as hell. So yeah, there's just the most striking thing about this thing is the art style, but it really seems to me like it is style over substance when it comes to the art style. I do not find it. Oh, here's the part I want to talk about. Remember the Remember the sign? Look at it. Here it is here. Does that look like a shower? I thought that when they were going to open this would be some kind of a bathroom, right? It's on both sides of the door. Okay, so they open it. Okay. And I thought, okay, there will be like, so I didn't mind if this was going to be like some kind of storage compartments and everything like that. Cool. This could have been like a detoxification shower stuff. So there could have been a bunch of like scientific samples that are stored in here, and then later on there's like a shower so that people can decontaminate themselves or sterilize themselves for whatever reason. But tell me, does this look like a shower? Does this look like there's any bathing operation happening whatsoever in this particular place? Would you make this place inviting enough for people to come and shower in? There are no lights on the ceiling. You know, no, this just looks like an industrial as room. So what is this sign communicating? What would they have communicated to the original people that were supposed to live there? Why is it so confusing? Why does it make less sense than, oh my god, it's just over here. I want to ask you, why is this the way that it is? Why is there seal? Why is there link? Why is there seal all around the door? Again, these are for humans. Why would a human need to know that they seal, 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 seal? Like, why would they need to do that, right? Over there, there's a bench. There's that stupid storage box with STN again on it. Like, I guess these humans, whatever this STN stands for, I guess they needed to see it in order to understand it or believe it for every single space. But I've got to ask you, why is the fucking floor neon green? Tell me, why is the floor neon green? What does that do? And then you know what made me pissed off when I saw this in the trailer? What made me the most pissed off? The entire reason behind this video, right? And the reason that I've gone so hard on this, and the reason that I just grew such a distaste for this world is this wardrobe here. Do you or this locker, right? Locker, wardrobe, whatever the fuck this is. Do you see this word there? Open. Why the fuck does it need to say open? Yo, that was the thing that just set me off. I was like, why why would that be a thing? Okay, why does it have arrows pointing to, I suppose, where you can open it? That's cool. But why wouldn't that part be neon green? Out of everything in this entire room, wouldn't that be the part where you said like, hey, this is the signifier. The color itself can be the signifier. Why does it need to say open? Bro, if you just made these three handles, you made them stand out by being neon green or red or blue or purple instead of fucking black, right? You wouldn't even need the arrows pointing to it. Now, listen, again, the arrows, I can understand that this is for the mech droids to be able to know and find it. Again, image recognition. But again, the human doesn't need open because it should be obvious to a human that you can open it, especially again, if you don't make the handle, not stand out at all. But the machine certainly doesn't need it because machines don't need to go by our conventional rules. When I looked at this, I knew that they had failed as world designers, as a sci-fi world designer. I wish that there was enough patience from both me and you, the viewer, for us to go and look at other sci-fi worlds like Cyberpunk 2077, where I think they tried to do a much better job with the industrial design and communicating to the end user how things are supposed to be. I think they did it in a way that was a lot more respectful of the citizens' intelligence, like the actual in-universe citizens of Cyberpunk. I think I actually respected a lot more than that. And the reason that I say that is that down here it says attach. Okay, tell me, what is a human supposed to go and attach to? Again, we've already established it. Words are for people, not machines. What are they supposed to attach? This signifier here signifies no affordance. It tells you to do something that you literally cannot do. What are you attaching on there? Or I guess it was sliding these the storage boxes underneath. I guess that's the only thing you can attach. Um, but when I saw this room, I was like, oh, they actually don't understand how design is supposed to go. They don't understand it, you know? And yet, when you see this object over here, it makes sense. Look, these arrows communicate to you what action you're supposed to do to, I guess, activate the frag grenade. You're supposed to pull it away from the body like that. Those arrows make a lot of sense. The color makes a lot of sense. The fact that the handle part, there's a circle there for your finger to go in. This is a beautifully designed grenade. And yet, everything else about the room, it just kind of seems like, wow, you didn't care enough. I feel like some people understood the assignment. Some people understood that, hey, we are going into this neo futuristic world and things are going to look different, but they still have to follow logical rules and they still have to be designed for people. Again, a machine wouldn't need this thing to be bright red. A machine could just scan the object, recognize the shape, and then generally assert its function because it has machine learning and processing. But a human would really appreciate the color coding, the arrows and everything like that. You could show this grenade to a 5-year old. They might not recognize that it's a grenade, but they will know how to use it because this is really great industrial design. It's great object design, but the rest of it is pretty shit. And then when I noticed that room, and over here again, this is a science lab. You can see bio waste written there, right? If I just go back again, ask yourself, why is the floor neon green? Why does it say link down there? What is a human going to link there? Where would I link anything? Right? Take a look at it. This panel here is this panel over there. So what am I linking? Now you could be like this little receptacle there is kind of like the power station for this entire desk, but the link word isn't near that. This graphic on its own there will be enough to communicate even to a person that, hey, this is where you plug something in. So again, why is there a link all around there? It makes no sense. There's nothing that you're linking. And even if you say, oh, Emmanuel, it's a link, this thing over here, again, you will just need to link it once. Why would it need to be permanently displayed? The people didn't care, right? Over there, if you remember I had a screenshot, right, of the room where people could set up and they could wear these neon green suits, and they had a bio waste bin. And in that corner, the bio waste bin was neon green. And I said to you, like, it doesn't need to be neon green because, again, if neon green is supposed to be the signifier of, like, hey, pay attention in this world, then it should have been a different color. Here is the exact same bin model, but now in a color that makes a lot more sense. This makes a lot more sense for people. Yes, it's good for you to know that you put bio waste in here, but you don't need it to be a neon green to call your attention to all of the time. Oh my goodness. So listen, I don't need to go on. Okay. Oh, I will say I really like that landing pad. I think the landing pad, the person that designed the landing pad must have been the person that designed the grenade. Because this makes a lot of sense, right? Again, you can see machine recognition here. You can say that this is made purely for a machine to be able to align itself and land perfectly on the pad. And this is a freaking great pad. This makes a lot of sense. Everything about it, I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense. And look, there are no words written. There's no word that says fucking land or take off. So that yo, oh man, um, I think that artistically this is a failed experiment. I really do. I think that they did not respect the rules of the world. They didn't really have even any rules of this world. I don't understand why this thing was purple, bright purple, because it doesn't. This is supposed to be your exfiltration beacon, right? This is supposed to be the thing that takes the resources back to the people in space or to your vault in space or whatever it is. Here's the problem. Why would it be this strong neon purple, okay, when the people, the corporations that send you down here know they are in competition with other people? So why would they make it so that you can stand out from the environment so much? They should make this thing camouflage, right? They should make it something that is at least a dull, like black everywhere, so that it doesn't stand out from its environment as much as possible, or maybe a stark white in case it's in a snowy area. But no, this here is just there for you, the player, right, to communicate to you that here is this thing. It doesn't make any sense in universe. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. By the way, I could have also gone into the whole symbolism of the place. So, for example, do you see these lines over here? Right? This looks like QR codes that are just coded a different way. Yeah, these are extremely inconsistent. whether they use stripes or shapes or arrows or chevrons or anything like that, there is no consistent visual language that they have created for the machines themselves. They haven't decided if they're going to go all QR codes. They haven't decided whether they're going to go lines with dots. They haven't decided whether they're going to go pluses or minuses or anything like that. They just have a whole bunch of symbols, from anywhere, without thinking to themselves like, wait, what would be a consistent thing that these machines will consistently scan? Now, would any of that make the game better? No. Why? That is not gameplay. That is not the world. That is not the mechanics. That is not what it does. But it is sci-fi, and I feel like if you cannot understand the very basic premise of the world that you're trying to create, it's hard to nail anything else. So yeah, I was really disappointed by the Bungie reveal, and it took me a while to kind of like assess my thoughts and process it as to what disappointed me so much. But then I remembered that I had this book, The Design of Everyday Things, and I want you to know that this book has affected the things that I purchase. When I take a look at for example, I really love window shopping multi-million dollar homes. Not that I could buy them, at least not yet, but one of the things that I love to take a look at is the powder room, the kitchen, and quite often, like the garage. And for me, it's like how well did the designers with a supposedly unlimited budget, how well were they able to create a space that is cohesive for the human experience, right? That makes sense for people. And a lot of the things that make a good space, a good object, a good system to interact with, electronic or tactile, is are the principles in this book, right? I'm not saying it's the only book that you could ever read. I haven't even read most of it. I've only gotten to like maybe like the first 20% of this book. But that alone had given me such a deep appreciation for good design. And I mean in everything from whether that's industrial design, whether that's objects, whether those are, cups and plates and forks, and everything like that. Even the what is it? The dish rack that I have, um, I think is a really well designed dish rack. Because again, it communicates to you in so many ways what it is able to do. What, let's flex my dish let's flex my dish rack, so you guys can understand a little bit why I think that it is, I want to say, superior to a lot of the other dish racks that I have seen around, and why I love it so much, right? So here is the actual manufacturer, and we're going to take a look at this. And what I want to see is if this dish rack is understandable without any instructions, because that really is it for me. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have just like. Can I just have an overview shot? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's take a look at this dish rack, right? Emmanuel has talked it up. Here is the dish rack, right? Not particularly big, not particularly impressive. Okay, but can you sort of understand what this dish rack affords you to do? Can you sort of understand by looking at it and I guess seeing these photos, okay? Whether you look at any view, the things that you're able to do. Now, over here, do you see these rails? When I first saw this dish rack, these rails immediately before I saw anything about it, this rails automatically communicated to me that this dish rack can be made smaller, right? Because otherwise, why would there be a rail there, right? Then over here, the thing that I like about this rack is that they have this little grid pattern here that allows you to put plates in any direction that you want. So if you have like a really wide plate, you can actually put it in a direction that accommodates for that size rather than the typical direction that you would, right? Then over here, if you take a look at some of the marketing spiel over here, you can see that this part over here is made for like your ironing board or something of that similar shape and size, right? I have to go out of this. Over here, you can see that these pegs continue so that even if you decide to remove the part that is supposed for your spoons and forks in order to give yourself more drying space, you can see that they will fit, and you can also move this thing anywhere that these pegs are if you want it to be attached to the dish rack. So again, Over here, these things here communicate to you not only that this is a drainage channel, right? But also if you had small items that can actually fit within these specs, it can actually hold up some of my plates as well. So it becomes like an extension of the dish rack in itself, right? Over here is the sprout, and this communicates to you that the drainage channel that is there, all of the water will come out of the sprout down here, right? So I think that when you take a look at it in its totality, this is a very smart, beautiful looking, but really well designed dish rack that from the beginning sort of shows you everything that it can do and signifies to you what it is made for, kind of like in a very intuitive manner, right? So we've got that little video playing, and I don't know. Now, I'm not sponsored, right? Just in case we need to say this, by this company, but I have a few of their products, and I think that their designers would have done a better job of designing marathon. That's what I think. I think that the people at Joseph and Joseph would have done a better world of designing marathon's world, so that it made sense and it was more consistent and so on and so forth and everything like that. Okay, so if you're interested, I mean, by this point, if you've listened to all of me talk, Jesus Christ, you must be at least interested, right? Pick up this book, The Design of Everyday Things. You're going to love it. It's going to give you an appreciation for everything in your life, every object that you can interact with, every electronic system. Part of the reason that I don't even like Windows is because of this book, because I'm just like, yeah, that makes no sense. There are things that I know about how to operate certain electronic things that I'm like, yeah, if somebody hadn't taught me, or if I hadn't learned it from a YouTube video, or if I hadn't taken the time to research it, yeah, I would have definitely never known that this thing was possible, that it was capable of doing that. And yeah, or sometimes when you think to yourself that something surely should be able to do something and then it doesn't. And that can sometimes even be more frustrating than not knowing of a capability that an item has. Whew. All of that is to say that I think that marathon will be possibly a success. I don't know. I can't make a judgment call on that. But I don't think I'm going to love the world. I don't think I'm going to love the stories that that world can tell. I wish that they had created a single player campaign, not even because I want to play the single player campaign, but because I think by weaving in a story, it would force you to make things make sense. Like it just wouldn't make sense if you actually think about it from a narrative standpoint, that some buildings are bright neon green and some are bright red, but those are like, I don't know, Mendes building number 105.5. Like it just doesn't make sense. Then you'll be like, no, we actually got to change this color scheme around so that, the headquarters, for example, building will kind of look like the most significant in the place. And maybe that is the one that is like bright red or something like that. Like the command center has a special color and people will be able to identify, or even to have consistency in the world, to be like, hey, um, neon blue is going to be consistently used around areas that may have water, things like that. Or maybe you would have thought to yourself, like, hey, maybe we should have metamaterial that can change texture, shape, and color, so that it communicates the status of the world or the status of the pod depending on what it is that is happening. So maybe if a building is inundated, the exterior color changes to like a neon blue so that people know that, hey, there is going to be a water hazard in there. If a thing is powered down, maybe the lights just dim in a certain way to again communicate from the outside. This very kind of like, it would be so great if you kind of had this organic brutalism, where it is brutalist because it doesn't stand out from the nature, but it's organic in a way that it tries to communicate and indicate to the user, humans in this case, what is going on at all times about the status of the place, the pod, and kind of like the survivability factor. Because again, originally you were meant to create all of these things to establish a colony in there. Yeah, how long have we been talking for? An hour and a half of basically just talking about the fact that I don't like where they've put colors. um, yeah, it's a striking art style, but listen, I guess I'll reserve final judgment. I guess it will make a cool. The good thing about it is that it looks radically different from any other offering, but man, I just I just can't get over it. I just cannot get over how much of a disappointment it is from a sci-fi perspective, you know. And the thing is, I've seen fantasy worlds have more scientific consistency and logic than this particular world that is supposed to be heavily sci-fi, you know. And I just you don't have the same flexibility, you know. Hogwarts can get away with pretty much anything because Hogwarts can have rooms that are bigger on the inside than they are on the outside, you know. Hogwarts can have things made out of trees that never die, you know. Hogwarts can have frames where ghosts live and they can interact, and if something happens in the world they can run away or something. Like, it's a fantasy world, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to really adhere to any rule. Part of the reason I don't really love Harry Potter is because of how flimsy they are with the rule set of the world. I don't really think that the world has any rules other than the plot needs this to happen, so let's make it happen. So that's unfortunate. But a sci-fi world, you don't even get a 10% of that flexibility. You have to be true, especially when you set it further and further into the future, especially when it's more and more dystopian of the future, because that means that there is less leeway for the inhabitants of that world to be frivolous. They have to get down to brass tacks and they have to make the thing happen in the most efficient way possible. So there. Yeah. We'll see how it goes, but I thought the live stream was pretty lame. I think the art style is visually striking, but style over substance. I think the gameplay was ho hum, kind of. I couldn't really get a good feel of the sound design or the gun feedback or anything like that. So you'll just have to kind of either take the word of those content creators that got to make they got to go and experience the game, or you just have to wait and see. In terms of the price tag, I have to say that the price tag is probably the only bright spot. I am glad that it has a price tag, only because I think that might curb the worst of the impulses when it comes to monetization. I call free to play games nowadays, I call them free to pay because too many of them are heavily monetized to hell and back. I wasn't interested in Concord until they said that, hey, for the $40 asking price, we are going to basically have no microtransactions. Unfortunately, Concord was calibrated with microtransactions in mind, so that the grind that you had to take, even though you could unlock everything by yourself in the game, the grind was excessive and the skins were shit. Okay, Concord's world, by the way, which was also sci-fi, was more consistent with its own rules, but it was just ugly. It was just a very ugly take. I just didn't like the art style. I don't mind the character design. The character design I thought was fine, was actually really good. I'm glad that aliens look like aliens, but I really, really didn't like the art style of the environment. I really didn't like the skins or the mods or the things that the characters were wearing. I didn't like the fashion design. I thought it was really lame, you know. And I think that's a huge part of why Concord fell is because the art style was just completely unappealing. Yeah, I think that Marathon also has kind of like a beautiful, ugly art style, and I think some people are going to love it and find beauty in it. I think others are going to find the ugliness in it. I would have been okay with it on board if it was really heavily rooted in scientific principles and logic things. Because I don't mind if you could create a kind of like it's brutalism. So brutalism is, like I showed at the beginning, it's not meant to be appealing to the human eye. It's meant to be imposing. It's meant to be stand out. It's meant to be ugly in many ways. So I wouldn't have minded that though if it was rooted in something other than just designers decided to add splash of color over here for no reason. So yeah, I didn't think this video was gonna be this long, but I guess I really, really don't like Concord's world. That's enough.